Monica, Ryan's a total wreck from drinking too much last night. If you don't mind, can you bring him some hangover medicine? The text popped up on my phone just as I swallowed a painkiller for my cramps. It was from Amy, Ryan's old classmate and now an intern at his company. She even sent a picture of him, slumped over with his head on her lap, his face flushed red. His usually sharp features looked oddly soft in his drunken state. I tried to move, but he wouldn't let me go. He's clinging to me like a lifeline. Monica, please come get him. Her message had a helpless tone, but I couldn't help catching a hint of smugness underneath. Amy was the only person who knew about my marriage to Ryan, and she'd been chasing him since college. If it weren't for that history, maybe I wouldn't feel so annoyed. I still hadn't replied to Ryan's mom, Connie, who had texted earlier. Monica, remind Ryan not to drink so much. Come home this weekend. I'll cook something nice for you both. I sighed, resigned, as I forced myself out of bed. My back throbbed with every step, and the cramps weren't helping. By the time I got dressed and called a cab, it had started raining lightly. I didn't bother going back for an umbrella. On the way, I stopped to grab the medicine, the rain soaking my sleeves. When I finally arrived at the private room, I was out of breath. Ryan, I brought some medicine, I began, stepping inside. Warm air hit me as the door shut, cutting me off mid-sentence. Ryan was already sitting up, his shoulders stiff and his frown deepening when he saw me. His voice was sharp. Who told you to come here? The room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at me, their expressions unreadable. A few people exchanged glances, their whispers just loud enough for me to catch. Why is she here? Doesn't she usually skip these events? Must be trying to get on Ryan's good side. So obvious. My hand tightened around the medicine bag as humiliation washed over me. Ryan's cold gaze felt like a slap. Even now, he was careful not to acknowledge our relationship, just like he had insisted from the beginning. Keeping our marriage a secret was better for the company, he had said. I forced myself to stay calm, swallowing the lump in my throat. I heard you were really drunk, and since I was nearby, I thought I'd bring you some medicine. Ryan's eyes narrowed. Who told you that? Who asked you to come here? I opened my mouth to respond, but pain shot through my stomach, doubling me over slightly. Before I could speak, Amy chimed in with a cheerful tone, giving Ryan a playful nudge. Oh, Ryan, don't be like that. I asked Monica to bring it. If an intern like me can come to these events, surely a senior like her can too, right? Ryan's expression softened at her words, and he finally nodded. Thanks for the medicine, he said, his voice suddenly polite and distant. You should head home and rest if you're not feeling well. The change in tone was so jarring that murmurs started around the room. She doesn't look sick to me, someone muttered. Seriously, what's her deal? Only I caught the warning in Ryan's eyes as I backed out of the room. Before the door closed, I saw Amy's triumphant smirk, unguarded and dripping with satisfaction. She had won this round, and we both knew it. Once again, Amy got to stay by Ryan's side, acting like his thoughtful confidant. There was a time when I would have confronted Ryan about this, turning it into a big argument. But he'd always dismiss it, saying I couldn't separate personal feelings from work. He never understood why her constant presence bothered me so much. Whenever we fought, Ryan would be the first to walk away, saying we needed time to cool off. No matter how late it was, he'd leave to spend the night at the company's lounge. By the next day, if we saw each other at work, he'd avoid looking at me. And unless I apologized first, he'd keep up that cold, distant silence. Ryan, I finally submitted the application for that project. You even stayed up late last night to help me. You must be exhausted. Here, I brought you breakfast. This was the moment Amy would usually appear, full of energy, chattering away like an innocent classmate. She was always by his side, making herself look helpful and sweet. And Ryan? He never saw anything wrong with it. In the end, he'd stay indifferent, leaving me to be the one to apologize and make peace. But not this time. By the time I got home, the rain had stopped, but my body ached from being soaked. I curled up on the sofa, the pain from my cramps keeping me awake. I didn't know how long I'd been lying there when Ryan finally came home. After washing up, he sat beside me. The strong smell of alcohol had mostly faded, and his hand rested gently on my stomach, massaging through my nightgown. "Still hurting?" he asked softly. I didn't respond. He sighed, lying down and pulling me close. We squeezed together on the small sofa. "Monica, did I make you uncomfortable today? But with everyone there, you shouldn't have come without saying anything. As for Amy, you don't need to overthink it." "Right," I interrupted sharply, "because she chased you for 3 years. And if you wanted her, I wouldn't even be here." Ryan froze, his sigh filled with frustration. "Monica, calm down. Stop with the sarcasm." "Oh, sarcasm? I'm just agreeing with you. Isn't that what you want?" My voice was sharp as I pushed his hand away. Pain shot through me again, but I sat up, ignoring it. I could already imagine how pale I must have looked. Ryan's tone grew colder. "I've had a lot to drink. There's so much work at the company. I'm exhausted. Can't you, as my wife, offer me some basic trust and support?" "A lot to drink?" I repeated, my voice steady. "And for whose sake? For me?" I shook my head. "I can't do this, Ryan. Let's take a break." For the first time, I said it before he could. Despite the ache in my body, I felt a strange relief. Ryan stared at me, his fingers rubbing his temples. His voice hardened. "How long are you going to keep this up, Monica?" "I'm not keeping anything up. Let's divorce. I'll move out now." "Divorce?" he repeated, his expression cracking for the first time. "Don't be ridiculous." He grabbed my hand, stopping me. "Monica, you know my mom's health hasn't been good. Are you bringing this up just to upset her?" I froze. He knew exactly where to hit. I'd never known my birth parents, and Connie, his mother, had once been my sponsor. After Ryan and I got together, she treated me like her own daughter. Her fragile health wouldn't survive the strain. I closed my eyes, my voice calm but firm. "Ryan, I'll play along as your loving wife. But this marriage, it has to end." Standing up, I walked to the guest room and locked the door behind me in one motion. The room was dim, and the air was damp, but as I lay on the bed, I felt an overwhelming sense of freedom. After a while, there was a soft knock at the door. Ryan's voice was low and hesitant. "Monica, stop this childish tantrum." Ryan knocked for a long time, but I didn't open the door. Before he left, he sent me a message. "Monica, you know I have a short temper, and I've put up with enough. Stop pushing your luck." For the next few days, Ryan didn't come home. He was probably staying at the company lounge again. Every detail of his life now seemed to have Amy's touch. I could tell from all her social media posts. She posted, "He's been in a bad mood. Luckily, I know how to mix drinks. Spent the whole night drinking with him. Hope it cheered him up a bit." She also shared that it was her first time buying men's underwear, and I could feel how awkward she was. The salesperson asked for the size, and I was so flustered. How would I know? It's not like I'm buying it for my husband. She even mentioned how Ryan was a great cook, though he said it was mostly because I buy the ingredients he's familiar with. Under her posts, the comments were filled with well wishes, and people telling her to go after Ryan. Some even joked about her being the future boss's wife. I tried to ignore it all, but it stung. Amy tagged me in a post. "Monica, you know me best. Everyone seems to be misunderstanding me. Help me clear things up. I was busy with a project proposal, so I simply replied, "Best of luck." Ryan must have been waiting for my apology and hoped I'd soften up. But instead of that, I responded to Amy's post, and even liked each one of her updates. I didn't have time for all these games, though the company was incredibly busy. The largest corporation in San Francisco, OS Group, had announced a huge project. Winning it would not only bring in big profits, but could also be a stepping stone to going public. Unfortunately, at that moment, we didn't even have the qualifications to bid on it. After a meeting, Ryan invited all the key staff members to a dinner at a hotel. Amy sat beside him, whispering in his ear, and her laughter coaxed a rare smile from him. Everyone else exchanged knowing glances, clearly entertained by the scene. The conversation eventually turned to OS Group, and out of nowhere, Amy mentioned my name. "Monica, you have no idea how destined you are to cross paths with OS Group's CEO Matthew." I was confused. What? How could I possibly be connected to Matthew? "I have a very resourceful friend," Amy said, standing up to show everyone a photo she'd gotten. It was of Matthew's first love, and I had to admit, the resemblance between us was striking. "You look just like his first love," Amy continued. "If you went and charmed him, maybe our company would get an invitation to bid." She winked at me mischievously. "Yeah, right," someone from the sales department said, laughing. "Monica's so flat. You wouldn't even know her front from her back. How is she supposed to charm anyone?" Everyone burst into laughter, and I felt the sting deep down. I had consistently ranked first in sales, but the rumors about me always swirled. And I knew people thought my success was because of underhanded tactics. Normally, I ignored it, but today it felt like a punch in the gut. What hurt the most, though, was that Ryan said nothing. He just watched Amy with a look that almost seemed indulgent, like he approved. Amy grew bolder, flashing her phone at everyone with the latest gossip. What a coincidence. Turns out, Matthew is here tonight. She seemed to take pleasure in it, turning to me with a mock apology. "Monica, I'm sorry. I was just joking." But it didn't feel like a joke. She kept going. "Monica can't handle a little joke, huh?" The murmurs were relentless, and I felt a tightness in my chest. I downed several more drinks, then blurted out, "Fine, I'll go." "Which room is he in?" Ryan's gaze lifted, cold and unreadable. "All right, enough of this nonsense." He put an end to the joking remarks, but I thought that was the last of it. As we stood by the hotel entrance, we happened upon a man walking out by the fountain. A valet held open the door of a luxury car, bowing slightly. The man heading toward the car was none other than Matthew, a face I recognized from countless finance magazines. "Monica, weren't you going to give it a try?" Amy's voice called out, quiet but sharp, urging me on. Everyone turned to look at me. Ryan's voice broke through the tension, cutting through the moment. I could tell that Amy was about to say something that would embarrass me, but I didn't want to make a scene. The alcohol had started to affect me, and I felt a little unsteady. Amy smiled and said I should thank her. I felt a strange urge to look into his eyes, Matthew's eyes. It was like something deep inside me was pulling me in. I couldn't back down now, even though I felt nervous. With everyone watching, I mustered up the courage and walked toward Matthew. "Excuse me, I hope I'm not interrupting," I said. Matthew turned around, clearly surprised. "And you are." For a second, I wasn't sure, but I swear Matthew looked a bit dazed when he saw my face. His driver, a big guy, immediately stepped in between us. But Matthew raised his hand, signaling for him to step back. He asked me gently, "What do you need?" As I looked at him more closely, I realized how unbelievably handsome he was. The cold wind hit me, and the warmth I had from the alcohol disappeared. Suddenly, I felt awake and a little embarrassed. What was I doing, standing here in front of this guy who was way out of my league? A chill ran through me, but I quickly introduced myself, told him how much I admired his work, and asked if he could spare just 5 minutes. I wasn't bold enough to ask for anything big. I just wanted a way out of this awkward moment. "I'm sorry, but I have another appointment soon," he said softly, frowning just a little, almost like he felt bad for turning me down. He got into the car and I felt totally defeated. I muttered an apology and started walking away. Amy couldn't hold back her laughter. "Monica, are you drunk?" she asked between laughs. Everyone else was quietly chuckling too. "Monica, seriously," Ryan said, his voice full of barely hidden anger. "What do you think Matthew will think of us after this?" I glared at him, ready to slap him. But before anyone could say anything, the luxury car turned around and stopped right in front of me. The back window rolled down, and Matthew's voice came from inside. "Miss Monica, if you don't mind, we can continue our conversation in the car." He sounded a little embarrassed, but his tone made me feel like he was expecting me to say yes. Ryan was fuming. "Monica, don't do it. Going with him will cause trouble for the company." Ignoring him, I jumped into the car. As we drove off, I could see the shocked looks on everyone's faces. I started feeling even more uneasy, but tried to relax as we drove. Matthew wasn't at all like I had imagined. He was much more down to earth, and he started talking to me about the OS Group's latest project. Even though he was in a hurry, he insisted on driving me home first. "Goodbye, Miss Monica. Until next time," he said when we arrived at my house, his gaze intense as if there was something more behind his words. When I got home, everything was dark. I flipped on the lights and went to freshen up. Ryan was sitting on the couch, looking angry. "So late," he snapped. "Where were you?" I didn't answer right away, so he pressed, "Just you and him alone?" I stayed calm, not alone. His driver was with us. "What did you talk about?" His anger was obvious now. It had been a while since I'd seen him this worked up, and for a second, I found it ironic. He could flirt with Amy all he wanted, but the second I shared a ride with another guy, he acted like I was doing something wrong. I realized in that moment how ridiculous we were both being. He was still stuck on Amy, and I was just caught up in trying to get his attention. "Why does it matter?" I asked, feeling tired. "Stop acting like I'm doing something wrong. It's not like I'm the one showing off with some public display of affection." Ryan froze, clearly frustrated, shaking his head. He looked disappointed. "Monica, are you still hung up on the Amy thing?" he said, his voice low. "Is this just a way to get my attention? Are you trying to get back at me?" Ryan's voice was full of anger. "If that's what you think, then you're going to be disappointed. This isn't some game to me. Whatever happens between us should stay between us." I could tell Ryan was upset, and I knew his insistence on boundaries probably came from what happened with Amy. She had once messed up my project data, causing the company to lose a lot of money. When we confronted her, she cried and implied I had always been hard on her, that I made things difficult for her on purpose. By then, we'd already had a lot of arguments over Amy, and Ryan had always sided with her, defending her as if she were innocent. Later, he told me off, saying I shouldn't be so hard on her, especially since she was a former classmate of mine. "You've changed," he said with a heavy sigh, almost like he thought I was beyond saving. That's when the anger hit me. "If that's how you feel, then let's get a divorce," I said, my voice sharp. "And don't use your mom's health as an excuse. I care for her like she's my own, and I'll keep taking care of her even after we're done." Ryan stared at me in disbelief. "Monica, are you serious?" he asked slowly, his voice filled with shock. "If we divorce, I'm never coming back. "I've made up my mind," I said firmly, not backing down. He stormed off, slamming the door so hard the sound echoed through the empty apartment. A little later, Amy sent me a bunch of messages. "Ryan is such a good man, and you don't even appreciate him. It's late, and you've upset him so much that he's at the company lounge, drinking his frustration away," she wrote. I rolled my eyes and replied, "Amy, I'm only saying this because you used to be my senior in school. I've always respected your relationship with Ryan. I never crossed any lines. I chased him for 3 years, and he kept his distance because of you." She kept going, talking about how Ryan had offered her an internship after she lost her job and how I should appreciate him more. Her messages were filled with sympathy for Ryan and blaming me. Of course, she probably knew by now that her messages weren't private. She often sent screenshots of our chats to Ryan, accidentally. I smirked and sent her a message with just one word: idiot. Then I blocked her. Not long after, I got a message from Matthew. We had exchanged contacts that night, and he'd started texting me from time to time. The conversations were light, just casual stuff, like what we had for dinner. At first, I thought he might be trying to replace his first love with me, but his kindness made me feel at ease. One of his messages really stuck with me: "If you need anything, you can always reach out." I debated replying, but ultimately decided to keep my distance. What I didn't expect was that, a few days later, our company got an invitation to bid on a project. Ryan wasn't happy about it. When he found out, he stormed into the sales department, his eyes full of rage. "Monica, step outside. Now." He dragged me out of the office, with everyone watching us in confusion. Once we were alone, he turned to me, his eyes bloodshot, a vein throbbing in his temple. "Did you sleep with him?" he demanded. The fury inside me boiled over. I slapped him hard across the face, the force making his head snap to the side. Ryan just laughed bitterly, pressing his tongue to his cheek. "If you didn't seduce him, how did our company get invited to this bid?" Amy rushed over to him, touching his cheek in concern. "Monica, are you crazy? You cheat on him and then hit him?" But no one supported her this time. Matthew, who had shown up out of nowhere, stood nearby with a calm smile. "I didn't realize your company was so lively," he said, his voice smooth and controlled. "Hard to believe you don't have more of a presence here in San Francisco." He turned to me, still calm. "Actually, I came here to talk about the bidding process. I'm not familiar with your company's remote location, Miss Monica. Could you help me find it?" The tension was thick. You could feel it in the air. Matthew was clearly angry, but I quickly apologized for the scene. "Mr. Matthew, I'm sorry," I said, trying to calm things down. I was ready to leave, but Ryan's grip on my wrist tightened painfully. His eyes were full of rage. "Monica," he said through gritted teeth, "the bidding opportunity. Or me?" I didn't hesitate. "Ryan, are you ready to make a choice?" I asked calmly. There was a flicker of hesitation in his eyes, but then he let go of my wrist. I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh as I walked away. Outside the office, Matthew invited me to dinner. As we sat down, I asked him why he'd offered our small company such a big opportunity. He cut his steak, swapped it with mine, and gave me a quiet smile. "Miss Monica, you're a smart woman," he said. "I told you, if you ever need anything, I'm here." That felt strange. Even though I wasn't sure of his intentions, there was something about him that didn't make me feel uncomfortable. Then, I asked the question I'd been thinking about for a while. "Could you withdraw our company's bid qualification? I wasn't going to let Ryan benefit from it." Matthew didn't hesitate. He agreed, and then smoothly changed the topic, asking me about casual things. The restaurant's lighting was soft, and I noticed that his ears turned red whenever he spoke to me. I realized that when he talked to me, the color in his ears deepened, Soon, the news that our company had been invited to the bid spread like wildfire, grabbing media attention. Ryan's company jumped on the chance, riding that wave to success. He'd finally made it, but something inside me told me I could trust Matthew. I felt he would keep his word, and I had a sense that he had a plan of his own. Meanwhile, I focused on finalizing my divorce with Ryan. At first, he tried to haggle over the division of assets. But as soon as the bidding opportunity came up, he grew silent. "Monica, don't regret this," he said, leaving. But I felt a huge sense of relief, and I was eager to wrap up the financial details. After a few dinners with Matthew, I began to see him as a great dining companion, pleasant, insightful, and trustworthy. He asked me about my family, past relationships, and my future plans. But he never crossed any boundaries. Something about him made me feel safe, like I could trust him. I was on my own, and I didn't think someone like him would lie or deceive me. I let my guard down, treating him as a real friend. I didn't have many close friends. My best friend from high school had drifted away, and no one I met later ever felt like they truly connected with me. In college, I spent most of my time in the library, focused on keeping my scholarship, and I was always on my own. I remembered one time when, on my way back to my dorm, a guy I barely knew set up a heart-shaped candle arrangement and confessed his feelings for me. I was so flustered and had no idea what to do. Everyone around us was recording the moment, pressuring me to say yes. That's when Ryan stepped in. He was already a top student, and everyone admired him. He called over some friends, and together, they blew out the candles. He looked at the guy and said firmly, "If you really like someone, you wouldn't do something so ridiculous. Don't bother her again." The way Ryan stood up for me, along with his success, made me fall for him almost instantly. But those memories made me drink more than I should have that night. Usually, I could handle my alcohol, but tonight, I was tipsy. Matthew hesitated a few times, but he didn't try to stop me from drinking. Finally, I asked him why he hadn't tried to cut me off. "It seemed like drinking would make you happier," he said thoughtfully. "Besides, I can make sure you won't feel terrible tomorrow." "How do you plan to do that?" I asked, curious. "My mother's hangover tea is miraculous," he said, sounding proud. "I've been working hard to master it." His tone was dignified, but there was this funny, eager vibe, like a proud dog showing off so different from his usual serious self. Matthew had this gentle yet distant way about him that made me laugh without being able to stop. When I noticed he was blushing, I couldn't help but tease him. "Is it really that funny?" he asked, clearly embarrassed. I looked into his eyes, almost losing myself in their warmth and charm. The atmosphere shifted, and there was something unspoken hanging between us. I quickly broke eye contact, turning the conversation to how I had met Ryan and how our relationship had unfolded. I admitted that I had truly loved him, even though Amy felt like a fishbone lodged in my throat, constantly suffocating me. Matthew responded, asking, "But he was treating you poorly. Why didn't you leave sooner?" I thought for a moment and said, "Maybe it's the sunk cost effect. Emotions are like that once you invest so much, it's hard to let go." By the time I realized I should leave, I was already trapped by the memories of the good times and a part of me that didn't want to let go. I sighed. But now, it's time. This divorce was long overdue. Ryan's reaction to hearing about it surprised Matthew. "Why do you seem even happier about it than I do?" I teased. "Oh, not at all," Matthew quickly replied, though his smile betrayed him, turning into a delighted grin. That night, I received a message from Matthew. It said, "I realize that when you finally meet someone you've admired for so long, you don't need to separate them from the image you once had of them because they are that very image." I couldn't help but wonder if he was talking about his first love. I felt genuinely happy for him, but also a strange weight in my heart. What would it be like for someone as gentle as him to love someone? A few days later, I went to an out-of-town event. Matthew had told me beforehand he wanted to introduce me to a couple of friends. But when I arrived, I was surprised to find two older people. The man's face was familiar, a prominent figure often in the news. He greeted me with an emotional smile, while the woman who I'd never seen before stared at me, tears in her eyes. To my shock, she looked remarkably like me. I felt a strange sensation, wondering if this could be Matthew's first love. But something didn't add up, the age didn't match. Matthew noticed my confusion and introduced them. It didn't take long for me to understand what he was implying. The woman cried, embracing me tightly, and the man gently comforted her. When he looked up at me, his eyes were red. They explained that I had gone missing as a child after a kidnapping attempt, but had escaped, eventually disappearing. They believed I had suffered memory loss along the way. I was overwhelmed, not unhappy, just confused. Aunt Rachel, Uncle Carl, please give her some time, Matthew said softly, noticing my dazed expression and gently guiding them away. Once they were gone, I asked Matthew about his first love. He smiled and pulled out his phone. The photo the gossip reporters had shown was actually an AI-generated image, a simulation of what I might look like grown up. I saw it then. There was a woman who looked somewhat like me, but it had an artificial feel to it. We chatted more, with Matthew sharing stories from our childhood together. The problem was, I didn't remember any of it. Only one thought lingered in my mind. So, he really did think of me as a little sister. When I snapped back to the present, he noticed I was a little lost in thought. He said his goodbyes, but he had forgotten his phone. I hurried downstairs and called after him. "You forgot your phone." But as I looked up, I saw Ryan and Amy standing there, and my stomach dropped. As Ryan and I stepped into the hotel lobby, his eyes flickered between Matthew and me. His expression darkened with each passing second, and I could see the anger building up. "What are you doing here with him?" His voice was tight, and his face twisted as if I had betrayed him. Amy, who had been smirking a moment ago, suddenly whimpered, "Ryan, you're hurting me." As if snapping out of it, Ryan loosened his grip on her hand and stormed over, demanding, "Monica, explain this to me." Matthew frowned and stepped in front of me, ready to speak, but I brushed him aside. "Just because your thoughts are dirty doesn't mean everyone else's are," I shot back, my voice sharp. "Can't you keep your mouth shut?" I shot Ryan a cold look. "Worry about yourself." Handing the phone back to Matthew, I turned and walked away. Ryan called after me, "Monica, I'm just here with her for business." But his words were cut off when the elevator doors closed. The house that Ryan and I once shared had been given to me in the divorce. When I came back, I was met with chaos. The living room was a mess, broken bottles scattered across the floor, filling the air with the sharp stench of alcohol. Heavy curtains blocked the daylight, casting an eerie shadow over the room. Ryan was curled up on the floor. When he heard the door open, he scrambled to his feet. "Back already? Had a good time last night?" His voice was sharp, each word cutting deeper. "Is that all you've got in that head of yours?" I shot back, dripping with sarcasm. Just then, I heard someone enter a code on the door's keypad. The next moment, Amy walked in, holding a bag of breakfast, still wearing the loungewear I'd bought her not long ago. She spotted me and rushed to Ryan's side, glaring at me fiercely. "Monica, what did you say to him? Do you know he didn't sleep all night waiting for you?" Amy's voice was full of anger. Ryan tried to signal her to stop, but she kept going. "Even if you're going through a divorce, it's not final yet. And here you are, sleeping with someone else." Her words were heated. "I won't even mention your lack of self-respect. He loved you for so many years, and this is how you repay him? You've really broken his heart." I laughed, unbothered. "And how many nights have you two spent together?" I move out and you assume I'm sleeping around? What about the two of you? Ryan's face darkened and Amy's face flushed with anger. She stammered, "You." But I cut her off. "And since when do you have the right to speak for him?" Ryan yelled, "Amy's just here to take care of me. We haven't done anything inappropriate, so watch your mouth." I slapped him with all the strength I had left. "When she insults me, I'm supposed to take it. But when I call her out, you get angry?" "Ryan," I said coldly, "my biggest regret in life is ever getting involved with you. Don't contact me until the divorce is finalized." His anger drained away, replaced by panic. It was like he was just realizing, for the first time, that I was truly leaving him. As I opened the door to leave, I heard him choking back tears. "Monica, But I didn't bother listening. I walked out. A few days later, I listed the house for sale and sent in my resignation by email. After that, with the help of my parents' financial support, I opened a private boutique. Reuniting with my parents gave me the chance to follow my dream. Looking back, working at Ryan's company felt like being a jack of all trades. I was shuffled around from design to sales, doing whatever needed to be done. But deep down, I knew I had more potential. I was worth more than that. Then came the OS Group bid. Ryan's company had disappeared. There were no records of them in the bidding. Their brief success vanished, along with partnerships that were built only on promises and connections with Matthew. Everything was unraveling. Ryan was in full-blown panic mode. Desperate to save face, he launched a media campaign accusing OS Group of abandoning their partnerships and bullying smaller companies. He claimed they'd broken their agreements and caused him serious financial losses. To counter the rising controversy, Matthew decided to hold a press conference. I had a feeling Matthew might just let Ryan dig his own grave, letting his arrogance be his downfall. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. In the past few weeks, Ryan had used OS Group's reputation to build his own fame in San Francisco, shedding his guilt and returning to his old, cocky self. Just before I blocked him, his final message accused me of throwing myself at Matthew, as if I were just a replacement for him. He thought his bid was secured and expected Matthew to compensate him, as if I were just something he had lost. What he failed to realize was that I was never his to begin with. This sense of entitlement led directly to his downfall. Before the press conference, I couldn't help but warn Matthew. "Please don't do anything crazy because of me," I said. I didn't want him to risk his reputation just to defend me. Lately, Ryan had been like a mad dog, sending random, angry messages and calling from different numbers. One moment he'd be professing his love, the next he'd be throwing accusations at me. Matthew, however, wasn't shaken by Ryan's behavior. "I don't think you understand what it's like to get back something you once lost," Ryan had said. But Matthew's promise to me wasn't about romance. It had a depth that went beyond words. His gentle face held a quiet strength that spoke volumes. When the press conference started, the flashing cameras were blinding. Matthew answered every question from the reporters with calm, careful responses, each one perfectly worded. Then, adjusting his tie and looking directly into the camera, he made it clear. Ryan's infidelity and lack of personal integrity disqualify him from being an OS Group partner. And that's all there is to it. Out of nowhere, Ryan charged through the crowd of reporters, his face twisted in rage. "And what about you, Matthew? Aren't you worried about being exposed for stealing another man's wife?" he shouted. It had only been 3 days since the bidding process, and yet Ryan looked like a man betrayed, disheveled, and furious. The journalists stirred with excitement, their cameras clicking rapidly like wolves circling fresh prey. Matthew didn't flinch. He gave a small, dismissive smile and waved a hand. "I believe you're mistaken, Ryan. You're already divorced. Miss Monica is an exceptional woman. If you speak about her suitors like that, What should we say about your own infidelities? Stop dodging the question, Ryan shouted, struggling against the security guards holding him back. But Matthew remained composed, addressing the murmurs in the crowd. Many suspect I have personal interests here. And in a sense, they're right, he said. Then, turning to gesture for me to come up from backstage, he took my hand. His grip trembled slightly, but his voice was steady as he announced, Miss Monica is, in fact, the long-lost heir of the Spencer family and my first love. I am pursuing her now. Ryan's struggle stopped abruptly, and he looked at me, stunned. The moment my divorce papers came through, I felt a weight lift off me. I was free. I picked up the phone to call Matthew. Dinner's on me, I said, eager to celebrate. As I ended the call and turned around, I found Ryan standing right there, too close for comfort. His face was haggard, dark circles under his eyes. Monica, he said softly, his voice almost pleading. Why didn't you tell me you'd found your biological parents? If I'd known. Ryan's words left me momentarily disoriented. Maybe I wouldn't have ended up in this mess, he said, his voice full of a strange mix of flattery and resentment. It was like he was trying to guilt me, but at the same time, he was angry. For a second, I was taken aback, remembering the man I once lived with, the man who promised me the grandest wedding when his business succeeded. But that man was gone now, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. What's worse than a relationship where the two people slowly grow to despise each other? It's realizing that, while you thought you were in it together, your partner was silently falling apart. You can sense something's wrong, but you keep convincing yourself that things will get better. In the end, that wasn't my fault. Matthew had once told me, Monica, you deserve the best. And looking at the stranger Ryan had become, I replied, I didn't tell you because it has nothing to do with you. Matthew, ever calm, gently led me to the car as Ryan shouted behind us. Do you think this is fair to my mom? She treated you like her own daughter, cared for you more than she did for me. And now, because you found these wealthy, influential parents, you're just going to throw us aside? Was I just a joke to you? 2 years flew by in the blink of an eye. My boutique, small but steadily growing, was doing well. Word of mouth from satisfied clients, loyal customers who valued quality, and new referrals kept the business busy. One client, in particular, left a lasting impression on me. She looked like she was in her early 20s, but claimed to be in her 50s. Her beauty was radiant and carefree, like someone who had lived a life filled with love and privilege. She brought in a steady stream of clients, often her extended family, each placing large custom orders every month. When Matthew proposed, I had an inkling of what was coming, though I still played along like I was surprised. Please marry me, he said, kneeling, his calm composure replaced by nervousness. I couldn't help but tease, proposing right off the bat, huh? He looked at me anxiously. You don't want to take responsibility for me? I smiled, trying to hide my amusement. It's not that. I just haven't met your family yet. You know I've been married before. Matthew pulled out a picture of his mother. You've already met them. My mom, my whole family, they all love you, Monica. My eyes widened. But she told me just yesterday that you're unreliable, and that if a better man came along, I should trade up. And if not, I should just keep you in line. Matthew looked baffled, but I shrugged. That's just how best friends talk. 6 months later, Matthew and I were married. The wedding was grand and took plenty of preparation. Some of my former colleagues from the design department came, and during a casual chat, someone mentioned Ryan. Apparently, his company had collapsed due to Amy's poor management. She had started as an intern but made countless mistakes with contracts. But because she was close to Ryan, people tolerated her. Then her brother showed up, a man who looked like a gambling addict. According to a former coworker, he went straight to the front desk demanding money from Amy and Ryan. Ryan, of course, rushed to defend her, promising to pay whatever it took to help her. But it was a bottomless pit. Eventually, Amy and her brother drained him of every cent, leaving Ryan bankrupt. He left San Francisco supposedly searching for a fresh start, and Amy disappeared too. Just then, Matthew appeared, his gaze flicking over my former colleagues with a quick, suspicious look, before turning to me with his usual gentle expression. "What are you talking about, Monica?" he asked, his tone light, but his eyes betraying a hint of jealousy. I smiled, slipping my hand into his. "Nothing important," I reply, calming his unexplained jealousy and lingering worry. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and subscribe for more. See you in the next video.